Welcome to the DIY Writer Show with the mild-mannered, slightly heroic host, Jeff Bacon.
This is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast, and today I have Alan Hesse. Alan, how
Hi
you
there,
doing
Jeff.
today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. I guess it was Hesse, right? Not Hesse.
Yeah. It doesn't really matter. Yes.
it's me being an American going Hesse, whatever. Yeah. So how you doing today?
Fine. It's been a good New Year. It's been a good Christmas. Very lucky, not affected personally by the pandemic, which is always a reference point nowadays, isn't it? It's a reference point to whatever you do.
Kind of is. You're down in Ecuador right now.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
How's it down there? Is it
Just pretty much the same as everywhere else. There's strict lockdown, but they're doing a good job of lockdown, I have to say. They're very organized. It's pretty well organized. Of course, there's a sector of the society that doesn't respect the rules like everywhere else.
Oh, sure.
But generally speaking, the authorities have got it pretty much in hand.
Okay.
And I just hope that it's more people pay attention and reduce the risk level.
I think that I live in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
up in the U.S.
Right.
And I think we've done probably one of the worst jobs of Americans are kind of uncontrollable anyway. So, I mean, we just kind of do what we want. But
I'm originally from UK, and I know that in UK things are not being managed at all well.
Yeah.
I have two brothers there, and they're keeping their heads down, but they're looking around them, and it's there's a problem. There's a problem in UK with following the rules, it seems.
I get a kick out of when I go to like the grocery store or something like that, and somebody's wearing a mask, and they have the face coverings are required. Okay,
yeah.
So they have the mask down here on their chin. It's like,
right.
Okay, nice try.
Yeah.
Good job. Way to go.
I know.
You're really contributing to society there. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
But I was gonna say we're here to talk about your books.
Yeah.
So you got a new one coming out in February 27th. Now, the thing that I find really interesting about your books is you're a cartoonist.
Yes, I am.
With everything else you do, that's pretty amazing. So, I mean, do you do all the artwork yourself, or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do all the artwork myself. It's actually becoming a little bit of a stretch now because I do everything. Like from the research, my comics are non-fiction, have a lot of non-fiction content because they're educational, and they touch upon pretty heavy themes like climate change, which is massive. And so I do my own research, and then the dialogues and the story and the drawings and the art, the coloring, the editing, and I put it all together, the layout, the design of the book itself, so that it's print press ready when I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a long time, and so it's getting to be a bit of a problem. I might need to kind of get a team going one day. Yeah. I think. Yes, that would be good.
I can't, writing a novel is hard enough, but actually, drawing the cartoons and comic books. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for that, because I can't imagine, of course I've never done it, but that just seems like a horrible process.
Well, you know what, Jeff, it's fun. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's fun. It's fun to do the creative process of the artwork and the dialogues. I particularly like doing the dialogues, which is interesting.
Yeah.
The drawings are hard for me to do. It's not something that is easy. I guess I have a talent for drawing these cartoons, but it's not a talent that is, I can't call myself an illustrator per se.
Okay.
There are things that I just can't draw to save my life, like horses. And when I see the artwork in these comic books, that they're on like bestsellers, some of them. It's a completely different style, but I get a lot of value from precisely that quirkiness
Okay.
My style is being defined by others as quirky, in that it's not perfect. And
Mhm.
that is actually, so there is perfection in imperfection, if you like.
I
And
agree.
that is kind of part of my brand, actually. So, you know, one of my characters, usually I make sure my characters all have 5 fingers, if possible, if they're humans.
Okay.
But sometimes I get carried away and they might have 7 fingers. But you know what? Who gives a shit, right? It doesn't matter because they're just cartoons. And so that's kind of quirky, and that has become part of my style. So
That is
I'm
funny.
going with that. I'm going with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why not?
it's fun. It's fun to break the rules. Break the rules of physics and nature a little bit.
Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Being
Yeah.
a biologist, I'm sure that's not too, you know.
Oh, it's very liberating.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing to do that, because when I put my hat on as you know, as in my conservation world, as a conservation biologist, you can't put 7 fingers on people.
No.
Figuratively speaking, it's science. You've got to get it right.
Right.
You have to verify your sources. It's science. And so to switch over and express that science through cartoons and comics is very liberating.
That's cool.
Because you can just bring in anything you like. One of my characters is a penguin, who's a character I'm developing in my latest book. And the penguin is a sidekick of my main character. And the penguin is inspired by Looney Tunes, Wile E. Coyote, and characters. Yeah. So it's that kind of suspended disbelief that comes in, because Wile E. Coyote will go to extraordinary lengths to catch the roadrunner, and that will include pulling a cannon from behind his back,
Right.
which is physically impossible, and but that kind of fantasy element is very liberating, and my penguin has that ability. He can pull out a Kalashnikov from nowhere if he needs one and use it. Which is fun.
It is. I kind of laugh at Wile E. Coyote because it wasn't too long ago I had to explain who that was to my 20-year-old daughter.
Oh my God, 20-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
well, oh my goodness. Well, I just
felt
turned
that it was a
51.
personal failure as a parent that she didn't know who Wile E.
Yes.
Coyote was. It's like I've
you
done a
failed.
horrible job of educating you. Sit down.
I
There's some
know.
things to talk about.
I know. I get that. And in fact, that is one of the reasons I'm having a hard time finding my audience, to be very honest. I'm still trying to find my audience out there for this kind of work, because a lot of the kids are not into that anymore. They're more into a lot of the kids I've come into contact with my age range, which is 9 to 12, kind of middle grade. A lot of them, especially in Asia, a lot of them are really into the Japanese manga style.
Oh, sure.
And that's a very, very different kettle of fish, right? Yeah. And then there's the superheroes and all this.
So do you have success in the US? Because I would think that this would be something that would be picked up by educational systems.
I'm working on it. It's I can say that everyone who comes into contact with my books loves them, which is a very good sign. And that includes mostly adults, actually. It's I'm always asked what is my target audience, what is my age range? And I know that as an author, I have to have an age range, and it is 9 to 12 years old. That's the middle grade. But a lot of adults actually enjoy my books as well, and kind of get the more subtle humor that's in the dialogues.
Well, when you talk about subtle humor, that's kind of interesting that you combine that with some pretty serious topics.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of doing it. It's they are serious topics. And let's take climate change, global warming for one moment as the example. It's a very depressing subject. It's a very, very, it can be very confusing. It can be daunting. It's scary. When you look at the science, it's pretty scary. The media is full of bad news, which there's a new term now called climate anxiety that exists, that actually exists. It's called climate anxiety.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? That's a new term from the last year or two. And so bringing that information out, but particularly bringing out the solutions, because there are solutions out there. I'm not going to get into global warming right now, but I just want to say that there are solutions out there that are actionable today, and that many sectors of society are working on, right from industry, business, private sector, public sector. A lot of individuals and groups are working actively as I speak on some very sophisticated solutions to get us through this. So there are solutions out there, and I'm using the humor and the storytelling aspect of things through comic books to bring that out, to bring out, this is the issues. These issues are real, but some of them have solutions, and these are the solutions, and here are the people doing them, and this is where they're happening. So I build that in to a story that is told in comic strip format with characters that are both human, non-human, and that way I kind of mix the entertainment with the education. It's a pretty narrow line to walk sometimes. You have to find the right balance. So I'm still working on that.
My normal joke when we start talking about global warming is that it's January in Wisconsin. Right now I'm kind of for it. In the summers I'm not, but right now I'd be like, that snow could go away. Right. Yeah, I could move, but that ain't happening. But
well, that's good that you brought that up, because one of the points that I'm explaining in my new book is the difference between climate and weather.
Okay.
And that is, I used to also confuse the two, and they're not the same. And that's one of the reasons why there's such things as climate denial and all this sort of thing. So I go into that in my new book. Hopefully that will help to make more people understand, more kids as well understand, the difference, and they can go and tell their parents. That's kind of like the idea, The kids are the communicators here.
Well, yeah, and they're going to be the people that actually have to deal with it down the road,
yeah. Exactly.
Realistically. Yeah. But that is an interesting point. People take a look at what the weather is outside, and let's say it's an extremely hot summer, which really doesn't have a hell of a lot to do with climate change in general. When you're talking about climate change.
That's right.
You're talking about, I'm not a biologist, so I mean, forgive me if I say something wrong. Just tell me I'm an idiot and go on.
It's
the terraforming, the differences. You're down in Ecuador.
Yeah.
How the rainforest is shifting, and it's turning into it's going away, which would be a bad thing if it did.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
The death and destruction of certain plants and animals because of the environment changing, which is something that's happened, quite a bit throughout history. I mean, when you looked at, ice core samples and, so on and so forth, that, the earth has changed quite a bit over, we're talking, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, but,
that's right.
While it's happening here, it's very interesting, but somebody can't just look out their window and say, oh, look, it's climate change today, because it doesn't happen that fast.
No, that's right. That's you hit the nail on the head. That really is the essence of it. And it's very misleading, and it's confusing. And the reason why I wrote my first comic book about climate change, it's about 3 years ago, was because as a conservation biologist, I was working with farmers in the Andes, in the tropical Andes, in Colombia, and farmers are all about the climate. They're all about the weather. The weather for them locally, and climate affects them globally. But a farmer will always have a reference point, which is, when is it going to rain? When is it not going to rain? When will there be water? When will there not be water?
Right.
Water is the defining pillar of farming. And so farmers are very aware of their weather patterns. And, we had to frame our projects, our conservation projects, to save forest in a climate change dialogue, to make sense of that project for the donors who today are all about climate change. If your project's to save a frog or forest or moorland doesn't have a climate change argument to it, you're unlikely to get funding. Yeah. So we had to. So I suddenly found myself in a situation where I had to frame my dialogue towards the donors and towards the board members of the organization I was in a climate language. And I realized I knew nothing about it. This thing called climate change. This 3 years ago, climate change was not in the media as it is today. It was not in the news. This was before Greta Thunberg, right?
Right.
It was before the youth movement. It was before all this upheaval that happened in 2019. And so it wasn't in the news, and there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion going around. And so I decided to write a comic book about it, to learn about it, and to help others learn about it, and having fun at the same time.
I don't know how it is around the rest of the world, but I can tell you in the US, you can't believe a damn thing the news people say, because it
I know
may have some facts in it. It may not. It may be hyperbole. And then all of a sudden they put an opinion in there and it's this and that. And then the people that follow the newscasters are like, oh my God, you know,
I know.
pick one.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, they probably know zero about the actual science behind it, but here they are spewing off like they know, you know, like they're an expert in something. And it's like, nah, I don't think so.
It's funny in the US. I have friends in the US and colleagues, and they tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's polarized. It's like you have there's a sector of population in the US that are the most ignorant on this subject as possibly could be. And yet you also have a sector of population which is the most advanced in the world on this subject as could possibly be. There are people who I don't know them personally, but I follow them. And I know they're at a cutting edge on the solutions and the science. And so there's this polarized situation going on in the US.
The thing that I don't understand is, especially in the US, you've got, you've got two distinct groups and then some other factions, basically. But you have the ones that are, you know, out there crying, oh my God, you know, this is going to happen and we're going to die, and, you know, so on and so forth. And, you know, this is real. And, you know, as far as the climate change goes. And then you have the other side. I mean, and it's dramatic. It's not like, you know, reasonable people sitting down saying, okay, we have this problem and here's the data, and actually looking at it. It's this drama thing. And it's actually, I think they do a lot of that just so they can get, you know, some sort of publicity. And then you get people on the other side that are like, it's not real. You know, it's not, it's just, you know, don't believe it.
I know. And
those people on the other side are all for conservation. You know, so they're going to be the ones that are out there. They're hunting. They're the ones that are going out and picking up, you know, trash out of the, you know, ditches, and, you know, and they kind of pick and choose what they want to, when they want to be conservationists and when they don't. On the other hand, I've seen these rallies of people for climate change, and when they're done, the area that they're in is absolutely decimated with garbage and all sorts of shit strewn around. It's like, wait a minute, you care about the environment, but, you know, you can't throw away, you can't throw away that plastic bottle. I mean, give me a break, you know. It's
absolutely,
everything's so damn hypocritical.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, because it's the people don't make that connection. And it's almost like rallying for climate change has become a new fashion.
Yeah,
it's the fashionable thing to do, and that's very dangerous because it defeats the purpose. It's completely counterproductive, and it's like people don't get the big picture here. And the big picture is that ecosystem collapse is happening because of human activities anyway, and climate change is both partly is both a cause and a consequence of like ecosystem collapse. So, you know, deforestation, which is a lot in the news a lot, deforestation both worsens global warming and is also worsened by global warming. You see what I mean? And that connection is very important to keep in mind.
I think it's funny, but they've known this for years and years and years and years. That I mean, especially when you start talking about erosion, and you start talking about different things. Where I come from, I actually come from a farming community in South Dakota.
Right.
And in the 30s and 40s, they would plant these huge tree belts, to stop the wind and the wind erosion, and also for the the animals, where they'd have some place to forage and some place to actually live and everything else. And so there's tree belts all over the place. Which in the plains is kind of hard. I mean, you plant specific trees to live there. Same thing with areas that the trees get wiped out and they put homes up, that type of stuff. It's replanting trees is important. They've been doing that for years and years and years, but when you tie that to climate change, all of a sudden everybody's against it. Or not everybody, but I mean, a certain side of it is, and it's just like, wait a minute. So you would plant 60 beautiful trees for landscaping in your yard, as long as it's not for climate change. Okay, I guess I don't care. Just plant the damn trees.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. It's this is why I want to bring out this subject in a way that's novel, in a way that's innovative, that makes you have fun while you learn about it. And it's kind of like, it's almost an experiment, actually. It's almost an experiment.
So your audience is 6 to 9 or 6 to 12-ish,
I think 6 is too young, I think, because of the dialogues. The technical content is pretty heavy sometimes.
Okay.
So I would say 9 to 12.
9 to 12. Okay.
Is my ideal audience. Yeah.
So how do you go about explaining the complexity of ecosystems to a 9-year-old?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, there's only so much I can put into a frame like the ones behind me.
Yeah.
With a bubble. The bubbles, there are technical limitations on that.
Yeah.
So what I do is, my books always have a section at the back, like either a glossary or like a classroom. My character is called Captain Polo, the polar bear.
Yeah.
So there's a Captain's Polo climate change classroom at the back. And what I do sometimes is I highlight the technical words in the speech bubbles in a color like blue.
Okay.
And at the beginning of the book, there's like a little note saying how, if you see blue words, you can refer to the glossary at the back of the book, or you can refer to the climate change classroom at the back of the book. And so in that way, I also use a lot of footnotes on the pages.
Okay.
A lot of footnotes, sometimes too many footnotes, because I also like to use original languages in my books, because the character travels the world and visits many parts of the world where they use all kinds of languages, some of them which are not even Roman languages, including things like Mandarin and acrylic from Russia, or Arabic, and all those are actually, I use Google Translate. And I actually put a lot of those words are actually put in that alphabet in the speech bubbles to add authenticity, to add a sense of, make it more authentic. It's like when you watch a movie and you go, the hero, whatever, is in Russia and everyone speaks Russian. It's much more authentic, the subtitle, than having them dubbed, So I hate dubbing of any kind. So a lot of the characters speak their original language in my books, and that adds to the footnotes, because I then translate the footnote at the bottom. Yeah. So to explain technical terms like ecosystems, it's something I won't be able to do that in a speech bubble. I'll be able to. I try and avoid technical words that aren't directly relevant to the lesson, the message I'm trying to make. But sometimes I have to use them in order to get there.
Okay.
So that's when I have to depend on that section at the back, which I know from a reader's point of view, particularly a kid, it kind of breaks up the flow. I know that from my own. When I'm reading a book, I love to read historical nonfiction.
Okay.
And you know, it says little note number 1, okay, I have to go to the back of the book and see what number 1 means. It's a pain in the ass, right? I don't like doing that. It kind of interrupts the flow, but I don't see how else I can do it.
I was actually kind of thinking that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
the
how
only
else,
way.
Yeah, I don't know how else you'd do it, but
I also rely a lot on the teachers, because these books are meant to be also directed to schools.
Sure.
And I'm relying on the teachers to help a little bit and say, oh, kids, do you know who can say what an ecosystem means? Raise your hands. So I'm relying a bit on them, even though they don't know it.
Right.
Maybe I should include a note at the beginning says, hey, teachers, help me out here. You know, maybe I should do that. Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, most of well, it's been a long time since I've been in school, but I mean, a lot of the, when they used to have textbooks, would have that very same thing. I mean, that's very educational based at that point. So I mean, you'd think they'd be used to it. I mean, but as far as story flow, you know, if you don't understand what you're reading, it's good to try and figure that out.
I think so. I think it's a mistake to try and dumb things down for kids.
Yeah,
kids are a hell of a lot smarter than we think they are, and you know, one mustn't dumb things down. I believe that they need to know. They also need to know the reality. Like I was criticized by a teacher once because in the opening scene of my first book, my character, Captain Polo, the polar bear, is hunting a seal. He doesn't actually catch the seal, but he's trying to catch the seal. And a teacher criticized that, saying kids will be traumatized because the hero is going to kill a seal, and that the hero should be nice to the seal and be friends with the seal. I think that's bullshit.
Thank you.
Right? I think it's bullshit because that's not the way nature works, and kids know that already. Well, if they don't, they should. So
if you're not being taught that in school nowadays, I mean that, you know, not all animals eat vegetables.
Right, they're not vegans.
They're not all vegans. Yep. Especially polar.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on this. The whole political correctness thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's one of my constant battles. I'm not politically correct, and I'm proud to say that I'm not.
Yep.
That's rest my case on that one.
Totally agree with that. The one thing I was going to say is that you know, I appreciate the fact that you don't dumb it down for kids, but I do think that you need to, I shouldn't say but always step it up for kids. You know, if they understand a concept, then go ahead and push them forward a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
I've got a 3-year-old that she's got a great imagination, and we were talking about animals the other day, probably about a month ago, and we came up with a brand new, because she wanted to be these different animals.
Yeah.
And so now she's walking around saying that I'm a polar monkaroo, because she's a part polar bear, part monkey, and part kangaroo, because she wants to bounce like a kangaroo. She wants to be able to swing like a monkey, but she also wants to growl like a polar bear. You know, it's stuff like that. But I mean, for a 3-year-old, that was, you know, and we came up.
It means she already knows what those animals are.
Right.
At 3 years old is quite impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember when I was 3, but I don't think I knew what a kangaroo was.
Try and read about 2 or 3 books a night to her, and you know, try and pick different types of books to read to her and everything else. But
so here I have a question for you, Jeff. You interview so many authors. Do you get the feeling that kids still read books with all this YouTube and everything, social media?
I do.
Okay.
I think what happens is that I think a lot of parents, and especially parents in the groups that I travel in, will read to kids probably until they're about 8 years old. And then they start handing them books saying, you should read this. And I think it's really it really depends on whether or not they're diligent about making their kids read, or letting them do the YouTube and screen type stuff.
Right.
And then I think there's a dead period between probably
Yeah.
9 and probably about 13. And then
Yes.
when they get into high school, I think they start picking up what their interests are, whether it's, and I think it's funny because it's usually one of 3 genres. So it's usually science, or one of 4, I guess. Dark fantasy horror, if they want to get a little
Yeah.
dark. High, or science fiction,
Yeah.
romance,
Mhm.
or pure fantasy. And that seems to be what resonates between that young adult area, between,
Yes.
let's say
It's
13
interesting.
and 20.
That's interesting. I once read an article. I think it was a blog post about the young adult kind of writing style. Authors who write for young adult.
Yeah.
And the character, the advice was your protagonist has to identify with a young adult. In that protagonist is no longer a kid. It can be a kid, but it's a kid who's not looking backwards to their childhood. It's
Right.
a kid who's not coming home for dinner. It's a kid who's going out into the world and who's exploring the world and who may not come back home.
Right.
It's a kid like the second half of the Harry Potter novels.
Yeah.
Right? He's not going back home anymore. He's like this. He's taking on the challenges. He's taking on Voldemort. He's taking on the dangers of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the article was saying with young adult literature, the protagonists, that's what they do. They go out there, and it's like a pre-adult. It's just before that stage of being a full adult. It's very interesting. I thought.
Yep. I think if you want to keep people reading, I really think that it's between that 9 and 13-year-old phase that you need to make sure that they continue reading through that as a parent.
Yeah, I think so.
So
I agree.
Just if anybody wants to question that, I've got a 9-month-old, a 3-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 30-year-old. So I've got a few decades of being a parent.
That's amazing. What a range.
Yeah, well,
Gosh.
I've been busy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But and that's what I really think all of our kids have always read. The 20-year-old's probably the worst one at it. And it's been hard to try and get her into something that she really likes at this point. She's into art. So she likes painting, she likes drawing, sculpting.
Right. Cool.
So I'm not too worried about her. The younger kids, the 3-year-old loves books. The 9-month-old, she loves to chew on them. And the 30-year-old reads books, which is great. I mean, she reads a ton. So, but I think a lot of kids like I said, I think it's that the ones that read between 9 and 13 are the ones that continue to read throughout their lives. The ones that do not are the ones that may be kind of helter-skelter with picking up books and stuff like that. So I think it's important to have literature that's interesting to that age range if you want to develop readers for the future.
Oh yeah, well, that's it. And
I think the invention of the Kindle, just ebooks in general, I think make it a hell of a lot easier because everybody's got that cell phone.
Right.
So switching over to a Kindle app or an ebook app makes it a lot easier than going all the way over to the bookshelf and picking up a book and opening it up. It's so hard.
Yeah. Well, when they're commuting, people can, when people commute these days in non-COVID times, everyone's plugged in, aren't they? They're all plugged in.
Pretty much.
To their phones. That's, so my books are on Kindle as well. I got them out there as ebooks. Putting a comic on ebook when you're doing it yourself, I can tell you, is really hard. It took me a long time to learn how to do that.
I never even thought about
Crazy.
that. I bet that.
Oh my God. Amazon's very good because Amazon has these templates and has these downloadable tools.
Yeah.
Which are free. Which I kind of combine and figure out and I managed to get my comics into Kindle format. But then other marketplaces, because I go wide, I don't just stay on Amazon.
Yeah.
I go wide, and the other ones want EPUBs. And then there's this. I had to learn. There's 2 kinds of EPUB. There's the fixed format EPUB, which is what I need, and then there's the reflowable EPUB, which is what you have for a regular book, like a novel.
Right.
The EPUB that are fixed format are actually ahead of the curve in terms of the devices out there that read EPUBs, I was told. And so, you know, a lot of the time I get refused on these platforms. I upload my EPUB, which has taken me a long time to figure out how to convert into, and it gets refused because it says, well, I'm afraid our readers are not up to it. You have to upload a reflowable one, which doesn't make sense for a comic book.
No.
So that's a whole area that I've had to, I mean, I don't know, I don't guess it's not a waste of time, but I really had to spend a lot of time getting my head around it. That's the kind of thing I should probably hire someone to do for me.
I was just looking at, so your one of your books is 8.5 by 11 if you buy the paperback.
Yes. Yes.
You know, which would be, you know, your typical comic book type format. And I was just, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, how the heck did you do that?
Oh, I had to basically start from scratch. You know, start from scratch. You have to reduce the size. All the formatting is different. And for me, that means all the text in my bubbles has to be edited.
Right.
Every single bubble. Because you see, you can't have the text that touches the edge of the bubble. It doesn't look good.
Yeah.
It's got to be just so. So can you imagine?
Nope, I can't imagine that.
I want to shout out to Adobe InDesign here because that's my tool. Adobe InDesign is fantastic. And any indie authors out there who want to do it themselves, because I actually enjoy laying out stuff. I enjoy that. I do. If they want to do it themselves, you totally can. You can totally make your own comic books using Adobe InDesign. It's a lot of work, but it's also very creative. And flexibility is incredible.
The one thing I'd say about that software is there is a learning curve.
Oh, huge. It's massive. Like all Adobe products.
Yeah, it's not
massive.
It's not something you're going to jump into and 5 minutes later be doing comics. You got to put in a little work.
I started off because I've lived all my adult life practically in South America, where, you know, everything's done on a different level, and pirated software is just the way to go here.
Yeah.
Adobe products are very expensive. And so for years, for decades, I've been using pirated Photoshop, pirated InDesign. But now that I've taken this up for the past 2 years, you know, really full time, I just switched to the Adobe Creative Cloud membership, which is the best. Because it's up to date, you get support, and it's really super professional.
Well, it's not all that expensive. I mean, it's like $600 a year.
Yeah, I pay by month. It's about $45 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's if you use it like I do almost every day, it's worth it.
Yep.
Worth it. And my kids are teenagers, and they really whizzes with things like Premiere Pro and all the video software and the other programs you get in the same package. So we all benefit from my membership, and that makes it worthwhile.
Yep.
You know,
you can have 2 or 3 different computers on it, and I mean,
you can. Yeah.
Yep. No, when they came out with that, I thought that was a great idea. Just because I don't know how many times I'm an IT guy by trade.
Okay.
You know, so somebody buys a version of Adobe and it's, you know, $700, and you know, and then the updates is another $200 a year and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, okay, you know, this was actually an economical way to actually distribute. They don't have the, you know, the boxes anymore or anything like that. And it was, like I said, I thought it was just a no brainer as far as, I think my subscription's like $52 a month is what it is.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just you know, and you get stuff that it's like, I'll never use that, but cool, I got it, you know.
That's right. With it,
but
one of the things I'd like to explore is the animation tools. I have no idea about any of that, but can you imagine my characters as animations? I mean, that's obviously something to go for.
Right.
I'm hoping one day to be approached by Pixar Studios. Hey, why not, right? Why not aim big? And have a deal where Captain Polo becomes an animated cartoon. And I'd love that to happen. And I just haven't met the right people for that to happen. It's all about who you meet.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons why I'm on podcasts like yours, because this is a great way of meeting new people and spreading the word.
It is, I think podcasts in general are starting to pick up. And I know that a lot of people say there's like 1.5 to 2 million podcasts out there. There's only about 500,000 they're actually actively publishing.
Right.
It might even be less than that. We do 3 shows a week, which is fairly aggressive if you want to have any kind of a life outside of podcasting, which,
yes.
is it's an interesting thing. But the amount of people that reach out and say, hey, cool, I can't believe I've never heard of this person or whatever, is really interesting. I mean, the amount of emails that you get, and it's like, oh my God, I never knew this person existed. I love horror books, or I love this, or whatever. And they email and they thank me, and it's like, okay, cool. I don't even know who you are, but okay,
right.
But
That's great.
I had one person that emailed me and said they watched a YouTube video. They watched the first 11 minutes of a YouTube video and said, I just had to buy it. So I just, it's like, did you watch the rest of the video? Did you watch the entire interview? No, I just loved her, so I had to buy her book. And it's like, okay.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's interesting. So, hopefully, if anybody from Pixar happens to be listening to this, you might want to give Alan a call.
I should say that my character, Captain Polo, is a mix between Paddington Bear and Tintin. Now, a lot of people in the US don't know who Tintin is. But now that the movie came out a couple of years ago, well, a long time ago, they probably will.
Yeah.
But Tintin is a legend in most of the world.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of character who's an inquisitive reporter, adventure protagonist who gets into trouble, but who's smart and travels the world, So Captain Polo is just that. He's an anthropomorphic bear who basically does a lot of reporting on environmental issues.
Yeah.
But, he knows how to use cash. He knows how to talk human languages. He can sail a boat. He can pretty much do anything that humans do. And so he's a mix between Paddington Bear and Tintin.
And I think that's interesting because, in the history of my cartoon watching, which is extensive, believe it or not, with a 30-year span between kids, but how it's kind of morphed. I mean, it varies between different age groups, but it used to be cartoons were purely for the entertainment value. Be able to sit your kid down to watch this and they'll just be entertained or whatever, with very little educational content. Versus now it seems like everything tries to have some sort of a at least an educational aspect to it, which is nice. To an extent. I don't like to rely on cartoons to teach my kids, but on the other hand, it's nice that they reinforce some different things.
It is a very fine balance to have. Even the Simpsons has some pretty non-fiction content in there, which is based on satire, heavy satire, which I think is fantastic. That satire still exists in this overly political world, right? Thank God for satire.
They haven't been shut down yet, but they're working.
Not yet.
On it. Yeah,
absolutely. The Simpsons are there holding up the flag for satire, but it's a very fine line to play between that entertainment value and the education value, because obviously, whether it's cartoons or a comic book, you want the end user, to have a good time. It's not about making it into a textbook. It's not about being boring.
Right.
It's got to be fun, but it's also got to impart a message. So
I just want to say the last 5, including this one, the last 5 podcasts I've had have each author's mentioned The Simpsons, And then there's one other cartoon that they mention.
Family Guy.
No, which is shocking.
I love Family Guy.
He's hilarious. South Park.
Yeah, South Park. That's
It would be the other one. It's like, holy cow. But I mean, Family Guy would be right up there.
It's if I aim to go for the education market per se, which means schools, I can't. It's very difficult. I have to. My content has been censored a couple of times for reasons which I find baseless, because there's nothing offensive in there at all. But I think a big nose on a character is part of a cartoon, but according to certain individuals, it denotes all kinds of racial prejudice and
what?
Yeah. You get all of that, but it's very rare. I have to say, it's very rare. But the education market, the schools per se as institutions, regulated by the law, have a lot of limitations on. They have a lot of constraints on what kind of content can be brought into classrooms. So even if the teachers think it's fantastic, if they want to keep their jobs, they can't just bring in anything they think is wonderful without passing it by the channels. You know what I mean? So it's
I know what you mean.
So when you have in some schools, they've taken the political correctness to such a level of extremity that characters with big noses are considered offensive on racial grounds, which I don't even understand.
I don't either, and I hope I never do understand, because realistically, in my world, and my world's very limited, but whether it be political correctness or whether it be something from a very conservative standpoint, all of this literature and all of these publications are out there, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's an education. It is something that at some point in time, somebody's going to be exposed to. And I don't think canceling that type of stuff or not being able to bring that into the school is right, because it's limiting their education. It's limiting their experiences. If we're really building up these kids to actually say, hey, you know what, we want you to be able to live in this world that we've created. Well, then, damn it, you got to show it to them.
You can't blindfold them.
No,
you cannot blindfold them. Absolutely.
No.
So it's something I stand by, and it's not a subject I particularly enjoy discussing, but it's something out there that has to be said. That there is a lot of censorship. There is a lot of censorship on visual content that is completely inoffensive, but deemed by some to be offensive. And it's a funny thing. I'm pretty sure the stand-up comedians you've interviewed have probably had similar kind of experiences.
Yep.
Because stand-up is based on satire. It's based on I would even say stereotype, because I use stereotype. I have to use stereotype in my books. I have to, because they're comic books. And so when my character is in India, there will be characters with turbans on. Namely because in India, a country in which I've lived, a large portion of society is Sikh, and the Sikh religion demands that men wear turbans. And there's nothing wrong with having a turban.
No.
And so,
and it's not racist, it's their culture, it's their religion.
It's the reality of it.
You don't want somebody walking down the street and all of a sudden seeing a turban being shocked that a Sikh's wearing it.
No. So
and they're proud of it too.
Absolutely. So I have fun with cultural stereotype. I have fun with that because I've lived in many parts of the world myself, and a lot of the content I put in my books is based on direct personal experience. Not as a traveler, but as a resident. Of those countries, and that makes a difference, because when you're a resident, you really get to know the in-depth culture. You get it to know, quite deeply.
Yep.
And I've always been one to embrace diversity in all its shape and forms. Cultural, gender, biological, whatever you want, diversity is so important to defend, you know. So yeah, a lot of the content in my comic books celebrates diversity. And that in itself is a message independently, but it's also, going back to the original subject we were talking about, it's also a big part of fighting climate change.
Sure.
Because biological diversity is nature's way of balancing things out. And cultural diversity, you know, gender equity, all that is important to keep in balance. It's all the same thing. It's all the same story. It's all about balance.
And I agree with you. I just, you know, when I hear these terms, it's just like, you know, I automatically go to the newscast and it's like, oh God,
I know.
I've blown this to hell.
I know, I know what you mean. Yeah, you have to find different ways of saying it. Yeah.
I just,
they're buzzwords,
and they kill it, and then they put a bunch of you know, I think newscasts are probably the best fictional writers in the in the US right now.
Oh my God. Well, TV news is something I don't do. I don't have a TV. I only use TV for Netflix, and I don't watch the news. I find the news elsewhere, specifically targeted news, but I don't watch the news on TV.
You know, there's still a lot of good publications out there that are actually, okay, here's the facts. You know, and then they'll actually say, okay, well, this is my opinion on this, or this is how I see it, you know, argue with me at this, you know, email address or whatever. And I really respect that.
That's right.
You know, the television stuff, I think, has gotten to the point to where it is so over dramatized and so, you know, I mean, it seems like everybody's trying to make you mad instead of actually giving you facts. But, you know, you being a biologist and in Ecuador, which I'd love to get into a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, in climate change in general, I mean, what are you seeing down there? I mean, that's a culturally rich place. I mean, it's got lots of history and everything else. And you're seeing that environment change. I mean, talk a little bit about that, just because I think that's very interesting. Not everybody has that perspective that you do.
Yeah, I mean, Ecuador can be divided basically into 3 zones, which is the Amazon, the Andes, and the coast. The coast includes the Galapagos Islands, which are very famous for their biological diversity. And, you know, there are overlaid on that culture, on that biological diversity. There's the human settlers settlement. You know, again divided into 3: the coastal communities, which are largely Afro-American. They're largely Afro-American communities, very poor, struggling with the basics like flooding, like landslides, all of which is made worse by climate change. You know, access to fresh water. All of that is affected by climate change, and it's poverty. The Andes is the actual native Americans of the Andes, the descendants of the Inca civilization and others that the Inca wiped out. And they have their own language, and they very, very close-knit society, very traditional society, which is based on farming. And in the Amazon, you've got, again, indigenous populations completely different to the Andean ones. And these are all about hunter-gatherers. These are hunter-gatherers that depend on the Amazon's diversity, biological diversity, to survive. And it's very, very, it's not at all densely populated. The Amazon is pretty much empty, you know. But you have a lot of interests in the Amazon for oil, unfortunately, in Ecuador. There's a lot of natural gas and oil in the Amazon that's just getting drilled up, and the government is not the most, you know, the government, it sways with the interests, the private sector interests, and it's all about money. It's all about money.
Yeah.
Is that a surprise? No.
I'm shocked.
So these are pressures, you know. The Amazon is so important, and it's under threat. It is under threat. we're not seeing the same amount of destruction as they're seeing in Brazil. But it's not to say that it's not happening as well. It is. It's, again, the media loves to fasten on these big news. You know, the Amazon burning, and then the Australia fires. All of that made the news, deservedly so. But then you know, something else comes up and it's gone. It's history. But it doesn't mean it doesn't stop happening. It's still happening as we speak. And so being here in Ecuador, these are pressures that I see. I see the smoke clouds on the horizon, even though I live in the Andes. I see the smoke clouds on the horizon, and those smoke clouds are coming from the Amazon sometimes. And so, it's a country that's very, very vulnerable to climate change. You know, it's and yet it contributes less than 1% to the global greenhouse gas emissions. And that's what you see all over the world. You see most countries that are the greatest emitters of global greenhouse gas emissions are not the first to suffer the consequences, with possibly the exception of countries like India, which is both a huge contributor of emissions and also very much impacted by the consequences of those emissions on a daily basis for a large part of its population. You know, but you have all the island states in the Pacific that are the first to be hit because of rising sea levels.
Right.
And I mean, their emissions are practically nil. You know, practically nothing. So there's a lot of injustice about this.
So,
subject. Yeah.
You know, my question, being fairly uneducated in this, would be how much of that can you attribute to actual, you know, human interference versus just the natural raising and lowering of the tides, I guess.
Well, the natural patterns of, as you said before, have been there since, you know, since weather patterns existed, since forever. But obviously the industrial activity of humans have over the past 200 years, they have accumulated these emissions in the atmosphere to unnatural levels. And it's that cumulative effect. It's that we are now starting to see the consequences of that. It's just a cumulative effect. So the more it happens, the closer you get to that tipping point where catastrophic weather events happen locally, and they are weather events that happen locally, but they are caused by the entire global climate situation. And it's just the human interference is entirely at fault. It's something that the Earth knows how to balance its own systems, but with human activity, it's like putting a spoke in the wheels. It's like putting a spanner in the works. It accelerates everything. So, and it's all very complex. And I'm not the best person to get into it too much because I'm not a climatologist. I deal with what's down on the ground. You know,
and I understand that, but you're explaining it very well.
Oh well, thank you.
I
hope so.
My humble opinion.
That's kind of what I try to do in my comic books. It's that kind of high level. It's high level. I can't claim to go deep into too much of it, but it's high level. But I do touch upon a lot of consequences of climate change that are not immediately associated with climate change. It's not only about hurricanes and heat waves and, you know, snaps of cold fronts and that. It's also about things like human war and human migration patterns. You know, a shortage of water, farming subsidies, political issues between different groups. The effects of climate change are all encompassing. And this is something I touch upon in my comic books as well. I'll give you an example, the Syrian war, which is still going on, by the way, even though the news doesn't cover it anymore.
Yeah.
It's still going on. The Syrian war was one of the consequences of the Arab Spring. which happened a couple of years ago. And the Arab Spring happened because there were suddenly a lot more, one of the reasons is that there were a lot more people in the cities. And in Syria's case, that migration to the cities was caused by an abnormally long drought that lasted 5 years. No water for 5 years straight for the farmers. So rural populations of Syria migrated to the cities in desperation to survive. And that created an enabling environment for all the tensions that resulted in the Syrian civil war.
Right.
So it's not, I'm not saying the Syrian civil war is caused by climate change, but climate change is definitely a contributing factor. Just like the droughts in Northern Africa are a contributing factor to the mass migration of Africans into Europe, which is causing all kinds of social and political challenges in Europe.
The one thing I'd say is that when, you know, I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, bullshit, you know, whatever. But if you look back in history, this type of stuff has always shaped history.
Oh, yeah.
Water sources drying up, agricultural, you know, not being able to produce food. You know, hunter-gatherers have always moved with the herds, with the, you know, their food source.
That's right. That's right.
You know, where I live, the U.S. is populated because it had a great number of resources that, you know, France and Great Britain wanted.
Oh,
you know, it's because they wanted to produce trade. They wanted their tobacco. They wanted, you know, all these furs and everything else. And that's why they came here. You know, I mean, this type of stuff has been happening since man has figured out how to walk.
That's right.
You know, and so what you're saying is nothing new. It's just that, you know, it's being told over a amplified medium, I guess.
Yeah. And then you combine it with increased population size.
Yep.
It's just everything, the stakes get higher and higher, basically.
Well, and it's like, you know, it's like playing Jenga, you know, you stack it up.
Right.
Then you start pulling pieces out or putting, putting something else on top, and, you know, all of a sudden you have an unstable type of structure.
So it's important that people realize when they hear about climate change on the news, it's important to bear in mind the bigger picture. You know, the bigger picture is all of these things that we've been discussing. And there's no quick fix. There's no one bullet. There's no silver bullet for this. It's going to take societal change. It's going to take restraint on individual level. You know, it's going to take awareness. It's going to take courage. It's going to take engagement. Get engaged. Like, vote for the right people. For God's sake. You know.
No, we're not going to get into voting.
That's as far as I'm going. I'm not going any further with that. Don't worry. No.
We're not talking about the voting stuff.
No, I'm not even going to mention anything about that. But that's what I mean, right? So my comic books actually even get into that. You know, they even get into that again at high level because, you know, again, these are for 9-year-olds to 12-year-olds. We don't want to make it too intricate. It's got to be high level. And then over the turn of the page, the character slips in a piece of ice and hurts his bum. You know, it's you have to mix the fun with the facts in a way that makes it page turning material, you see.
Well, yeah, you have to keep them reading.
You have to keep them reading.
You have to keep them reading, otherwise they don't get the.
It's a fascinating question.
It really is, and I admire the way that you're going after it. I really do. I think it's great.
Oh, well, thank you. It's good to know. Good to hear that.
It's a you know, in my mind, it's a huge challenge to write a comic book to start off with.
Yeah.
And then to take such big topics and create a publication that can educate somebody in that age range, you know, the 9 to 12, you know, 9 to 13, whatever, and be able to put something like that in the educational system, I think is very, I mean, like I said, I admire you quite a bit for this. This is a huge undertaking.
It is. The bigger goal here is to actually change the industry, because there is no genre. There is no established literary genre for educational comic and graphic novels. It's either educational or comics and graphic novels, at least on Amazon, which is the go-to place for indie authors. When you're asked to enter your categories, there is none that really fits what I do. So one of the things I want to do is change that.
Mhm.
I want it to become a mainstream genre.
Sure.
Just like, okay, middle grade, and then within that you have subgenres. You know,
Mhm.
so you have whatever. I don't remember now the different action and adventure, and you know,
Right.
I'd like one to be educational comics and graphic novels.
Yeah,
I'd
you know,
like it to be mainstream.
it will probably happen. I mean, I think the newest one that I've seen so far on Amazon is 2-hour read.
Oh,
So
really?
if they
Is
can
that a
put 2-hour
category?
read in as a genre, I'm pretty sure they can do this with,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you meet any other authors who want the same thing, let me know, because I'm looking for them.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a tribe. I want to make a tribe here.
Make a tribe.
It doesn't have to be comics. It can be picture books also. You know, as long as they're graphic and educational at the same time.
Just a second. Let me call Bezos tomorrow. Okay, I got this for you. I'll do
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Yeah. Get him
Yeah.
right on it.
Get him right on it. Yeah, right. Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we're running up a little past an hour here. Do you have anything else you want to say to your readers or fans or anything?
No, just that the adventures of Captain Polo are all out on different digital stores, Amazon and Kobo, and I think Overdrive and others like this. I'm working on converting the ebooks into paperback books as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the book 1 of that series is also a paperback, available on Amazon right now. And I've got the books 1, 2, and 3 of the Captain Polo Adventures as a box set. So you can get all 3 in one as an ebook. And that's on Amazon right now. And there's a pre-order available right now for book 4 of that series. Yeah. So book 4 is available on pre-order. Again on Amazon. You just have to, you know, use the title, The Adventures of Captain Polo.
Yeah.
That should be good enough, you know.
Do you have any plans to put this in a smaller format, like a 6x9?
I could do. I thought about it. It would be interesting, perhaps, to make a fatter book. I don't know what the relevance would be. I don't know if it's important or not. I guess I'm
thinking from the standpoint of libraries in schools.
Oh, right.
Being able to put it on the bookshelf.
Oh, okay. What size did you mention?
I'm not an expert. I was just saying, like,
smaller,
like a 6x9.
6x9. Okay,
something that would fit on a bookshelf.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'd actually love to see my books in the libraries, and I've been approached by all kinds of entrepreneurs who do that for you. But you know, it's all upfront costs, and I've thrown away a lot of money last year on stuff like this. I'm not saying they're not worth their while, but there's only so much upfront costs I'm willing to pay, you know, and I've thrown away a lot of money on experiments that haven't worked out for me. So I'm being very cautious now.
Sure.
But yeah, it's all up there, and Captain Polo has his own presence online, on social media, you know, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and I'd love people to follow him. I'd love people to engage with him more. Any kids who write to Captain Polo will get an answer, guaranteed, from Captain Polo himself in person. And I'm just trying to build up this alternate persona, you know, online.
Absolutely.
And he has his own website and everything else. So
okay. Just so I know, I've got your website up here.
Yeah.
And cool. Everything that you've talked about, I'll make sure all those links are in the show notes.
Okay, thanks.
So, and it'll be on my my website in the blog that we publish. So, you even have a board game. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's
I didn't see that.
I have an educational board game based on the books. That's free to download for joining the Captain Polo fan club.
Very cool.
You join the fan club and you get the game for free. Downloadable game.
Very cool. Yeah, that is that's good work, sir. Very good work.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Well, with that, I'm probably going to call this interview to a close.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I love the way you do this, conversational.
Well, thank you very much.
I think that's really, really good.
Well, I think it's been a great conversation, but
Actually, it has.
with that, I have to say, this is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast, bidding you a very good day. Keep your chin up. And if you would, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or any application that you happen to be listening to this podcast on. Follow me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me please.